I started working at the Meridian Distribution Center on a Tuesday. Nobody tells you the important things during orientation, like why the freight elevator to sub level 4 doesn't have a button, or why the night shift supervisor always takes the stairs. The building was a monument to industrial efficiency, 12 stories of concrete and fluorescent lighting, built in 1987 when the city still believed in growth. My job was simple: inventory specialist, night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The pay was good enough to ignore the isolation. The freight elevator was an old Westinghouse model, industrial yellow with scratched metal walls. It could carry 4,000 pounds and moved with the grinding patience of something that had given up hurrying decades ago. Most nights, I was the only one using it. Week 1 passed normally. I'd load pallets of medical supplies onto the elevator, press the button for Sublevel 2 where the refrigerated storage units hummed in the darkness, and wait for the mechanical voice to announce each floor. Ground level, Sublevel 1, Sublevel 2. Doors opening. The voice was female, recorded sometime in the late 80s with that particular flat effect that comes from reading hundreds of phrases in a soundproof booth. Professional, forgettable. On my 8th night, I noticed something wrong. I was bringing down a pallet of 4 solutions at 2:47 a.m. I remember, because I'd been watching the clock, counting down the hours until dawn. The elevator descended with its usual mechanical groan. The voice announced each floor. Ground level, Sublevel 1, then silence. The elevator kept moving, the floor indicator showing we were between levels. 5 seconds passed. 10. The mechanical voice should have announced Sublevel 2, but instead, there was only the sound of cables and pulleys. Finally, the doors opened. Sublevel 2. Everything looked normal. The same concrete walls, the same fluorescent lights, the same refrigerated units. But something felt displaced, like walking into your apartment and sensing someone had been there, moving things microscopic distances. I unloaded the pallet, signed the inventory sheet, and took the elevator back up. Normal announcements all the way. I told myself I'd imagined it. Week 2, it happened again. Same time, 2:47 a.m., descending to Sublevel 2. The voice announced ground level, then Sublevel 1, then nothing. Complete silence for exactly 15 seconds while the elevator continued downward. This time when the doors opened, I noticed the temperature. Sublevel 2 was always cold because of the refrigeration units, but this was different. This was the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache, like breathing winter air in a sealed room. I finished my work quickly. When I pressed the button to go back up, the elevator didn't move for almost 30 seconds. The lights flickered once, twice, then the ascent began. Normal announcements. Ground level. Nothing unusual. I started checking the maintenance logs. The freight elevator had been installed in 1987, same year as the building. There had been one major incident in 1993, a cable failure that dropped the elevator 3 floors. No injuries, but the entire system had been rebuilt. Nothing else remarkable, except, buried in the back of an old filing cabinet, I found architectural plans from 1986. The building as originally designed had 13 levels, 12 above ground and 1 below, but the construction plans from 1987 showed only 12 above ground and 4 below. Somewhere between planning and building, they'd added 3 sublevels. Week 3, the pattern became clearer. Every night at exactly 2:47 a.m., if I was in the freight elevator descending to any sublevel, the voice would go silent. The duration of silence grew longer. 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. And during that silence, I could hear something else. Breathing. Not mechanical sounds. Not the building settling. Breathing. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying to stay quiet in a small space. I started taking the stairs. Marcus, the weekend supervisor, found me on the stairwell during my break. Elevator broken? Just needed the exercise. He looked at me with that expression people get when they know you're lying but don't care enough to push. Yeah, I use the stairs too. Elevators in this place. He trailed off, shaking his head. The freight elevator, I said. Has it always been weird? Marcus stopped walking. What do you mean, weird? The voice. It skips floors sometimes. He was quiet for a long moment. Listen, man, you're new, so I'm gonna tell you something. The freight elevator works fine during the day. Use it then if you need to. But after midnight? He shook his head. There's a reason the night shift takes the stairs. What happened? 1993. Guy named David Mercado. He was working late, doing an inventory recount in Sublevel 3. Around 3 a.m. he called security, said the elevator was acting strange. Kept stopping between floors, announcements playing out of order. Security told him to take the stairs, but he had a full pallet. Decided to risk it. The cable failure. That's what they called it. But David, when they found him, Marcus rubbed his face. The elevator had dropped 3 floors and gotten stuck. But here's the thing. David wasn't in it when they pried the doors open. They found him 2 days later in Sublevel 4. Heart attack, they said, but the door to Sublevel 4 had been locked from the outside. No key, no explanation. He started walking again. Used the stairs after midnight. Trust me, but I couldn't. The job required moving heavy pallets, and the stairs weren't an option. So I developed a system. Never use the freight elevator between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Adjust my schedule. Work around it. It worked for 4 days. On the 5th day, I miscalculated. Got caught up processing a late shipment, lost track of time, loaded a pallet of equipment onto the freight elevator, and pressed the button for Sublevel 3. 2:47 a.m. Ground level. I felt my stomach drop. Sublevel 1. The elevator continued downward. Silence. But this time, the lights went out. Complete darkness. The only sound was the cable system and that breathing, closer now, like someone standing directly behind me in the pitch black. I reached for my phone. The screen wouldn't turn on. The elevator kept descending. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. The floor indicator was dark, so I had no idea how far down we were going. Sublevels 3 and 4 were the deepest in the building, but we'd been moving for too long. We should have hit bottom. Finally, the elevator stopped. The breathing stopped too. In the darkness, I heard the mechanical voice, but it was wrong. The tone was distorted, like a tape played at the wrong speed. Sublevel 7. Doors opening. There was no Sublevel 7. The doors opened onto darkness so complete it seemed solid. No lights, no walls, just void. And from that void, another sound, footsteps, multiple sets, walking toward the elevator with the measured pace of people who had nowhere else to be. I pressed the door close button frantically. Nothing happened. The door stayed open. The footsteps got closer. I could hear breathing again. Not one person now, but many. A chorus of slow, deliberate breaths. The lights in the elevator flickered back on. The doors were still open, but now I could see what was beyond them. Not darkness. A corridor. Concrete walls like every other sublevel, but wrong. The fluorescent lights were too bright, casting no shadows. The walls were too smooth, too perfect, like something rendered in a computer program. And standing in that corridor 20 feet away was a figure. David Mercado. I knew it was him from the ID photo in the old maintenance records. Same gray maintenance uniform. Same face. But wrong. His movements were too smooth, like watching a video with frames missing. He stood perfectly still, then suddenly he was 10 feet closer. No walking, just displacement. The mechanical voice spoke again, that same distorted tone. This floor is restricted. Please return to authorized levels. I hammered the button for ground level. The doors finally closed. The elevator shot upwards so fast, I nearly lost my balance. The lights strobed. The mechanical voice announced floors in random order. Sublevel 3, ground level. Sublevel 1, ground level, ground level, ground level. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. I was back on ground level. 3:17 a.m. according to the wall clock. 30 minutes had passed. I walked out into the main distribution floor and threw up in a trash can. The next morning, I put in my 2 weeks' notice. The day supervisor, an older woman named Helen, processed my resignation without comment. But as I was leaving, she called me back. "You used the freight elevator after midnight, didn't you?" I nodded. "Sublevel 7? How did you?" "There are 5 freight elevators in this building. 4 of them work normally. One of them," she gestured toward the yellow doors, "was installed wrong. When they were adding the sublevels in 1987, the construction crew made a mistake. Cut too deep. Hit something they shouldn't have. What did they hit?" Helen shook her head. "I don't know. But they sealed it up, poured concrete, pretended it never happened, except the elevator remembers. Every night around 3 a.m., it tries to go back, tries to reach that space that isn't supposed to exist. David Mercado is still down there." Helen finished. In Sublevel 7, along with everyone else who rode that elevator at the wrong time. The building can't help you once you step out onto a floor that doesn't exist. I walked out of the Meridian Distribution Center that morning and never went back. They sent my final paycheck in the mail. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that mechanical voice in my head, that flat professional tone announcing impossible floors. And I wonder how many other buildings have spaces that don't exist, reached only by elevators that remember what shouldn't be possible. 7 people have worked my old position since I quit. None of them lasted more than 3 weeks. The freight elevator is still running, still stopping between floors at 2:47 a.m., still opening its doors onto Sublevel 7. And David Mercado is still standing in that too bright corridor, waiting for the next person who forgets to take the stairs. The announcement system in the Callaway Medical Complex was replaced in 2019. State-of-the-art digital voice synthesis, multi-language support, accessibility features. The freight elevators, which transported equipment and supplies between the hospital's 8 floors and 3 basement levels, got the full upgrade. Dr. Sarah Chen, Director of Hospital Operations, approved the installation personally. She'd worked at Callaway for 15 years and remembered the old system. Crackling speakers, garbled announcements, constant technical failures. The new system was flawless. For the first 6 months, the first anomaly was reported by James Rodriguez, a night custodian working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. He'd taken freight elevator C down to basement level 2 to retrieve cleaning supplies. The elevator announced each floor normally: 8th floor, 7th floor, 6th floor, all the way down to basement level 2. Doors opening. James loaded his cart with supplies and pressed the button to return to the 4th floor. The elevator ascended, announcing each floor. But when it reached the 4th floor, the doors didn't open. The elevator continued upward. 5th floor, 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor, then 9th floor. Doors opening. The Callaway Medical Complex only had 8 floors. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked exactly like every other floor in the hospital. White walls, fluorescent lighting, that distinctive hospital smell of disinfectant and recycled air. But the signs were wrong. Instead of department names, cardiology, pediatrics, radiology, the doors were labeled with numbers. Room 901, room 902, room 903. James stood in the elevator, staring. The announcement system chimed again, 9th floor. Please exit the elevator. That was wrong too. The system never asked people to exit. It simply announced floors. James pressed the button for the 4th floor. The doors closed. The elevator descended, announcing floors normally. When it reached the 4th floor, the doors opened exactly as they should. James reported it to his supervisor, who reported it to building maintenance, who sent a technician to check the elevator. They found nothing wrong. The system was functioning perfectly. The floor announcements were accurate. There was no 9th floor in the programming. Probably just got confused, the technician said. Tired, long shift, these night shifts mess with your head. But 3 days later, it happened again. Different custodian, same elevator, same time. Around 2:30 a.m., the elevator took her to the 9th floor. This time, she stepped out. The corridor was longer than she expected, stretching in both directions beyond where the building's walls should end. The fluorescent lights hummed with that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache. The air was colder than the regular floors, cold enough to see her breath. She walked past room 901. The door was closed, but through the small window, she could see a hospital bed. Standard equipment, 4 stand, monitoring machines, all turned off. Room 902, same layout, empty bed, dark screens. She'd worked at Callaway for 7 years and had never seen these rooms, had never even heard of a 9th floor. The hospital's original construction plans, displayed in the main lobby, clearly showed 8 floors above ground and 3 basement levels. She took out her phone to call her supervisor. No signal. That's when she heard it. A voice from the elevator behind her. 9th floor. Please proceed to your assigned room. She turned. The elevator doors were closed, but the announcement system was still speaking. Visitor protocol requires immediate room assignment. Please proceed. The custodian ran back to the elevator and pressed the call button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Again, the button didn't light up. From somewhere down the corridor, she heard a door open. Then footsteps, slow, measured, like someone walking with careful purpose. She ran the other direction, toward a stairwell sign at the end of the hall. The door was locked. She pulled harder, locked solid. The footsteps were getting closer. She turned back to the elevator. The doors were open now, empty, waiting. She ran for it. As she stepped inside, she heard the voice again, but this time it wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from the hallway itself, echoing from multiple directions. Visitor protocol violation. Please return to assigned room. She pressed the button for ground level, pressed it 20 times. The doors finally closed. Ground level, the system announced normally. The elevator descended. When the doors opened, she was in the main lobby. 2:47 a.m. Security guard at the desk looked up, surprised to see someone coming from the freight elevator. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." She quit the next day. Dr. Chen reviewed the incident reports personally. 2 custodians, same elevator, same anomaly. She ordered a complete diagnostic of the elevator system. The technicians ran every test possible. Hardware check, software verification, emergency protocols, all systems functioning perfectly. But the reports kept coming. Nurses taking equipment down to the basement levels reported hearing additional floor announcements, floors that didn't exist. Basement level 4, basement level 5. The elevator would sometimes pause between floors, and during those pauses, the announcement system would speak in a voice that sounded almost like the standard announcements, but wrong. Flatter, colder. Emergency protocols are now in effect. All personnel must report to assigned stations. This facility is operating under crisis containment procedures. No one knew what it meant. The hospital wasn't in crisis mode. There were no emergency protocols in effect. Dr. Chen brought in the installation company. They sent their lead technician, Marcus Webb, who'd personally overseen the upgrade. Marcus spent 3 days examining every component of the system. "I can't find anything wrong," he told Dr. Chen on the 3rd day. "The programming is exactly what we installed. The voice synthesis is functioning normally. There's no way the system could be announcing floors that don't exist or giving instructions outside its program parameters." Then explained the reports. Marcus shook his head. "I can't. Unless..." He pulled up building schematics on his laptop. When was this hospital built? Main building, 1962. North wing added in 1978. East wing in 1995. And the basement levels? Original construction. Why? Marcus zoomed in on the basement floor plans. These blueprints show 3 basement levels. But look at the depth measurements. The distance between basement 1 and basement 2 is 12 feet, standard floor height. Same for basement 2 to 3. But the foundation, he pointed to a measurement. It goes down 60 feet. That's space for at least 2 more levels. Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Are you saying there are hidden floors?" "I'm saying there's unaccounted space. Whether there are actual floors, I don't know, but the elevator shaft goes down that full 60 feet. When we installed the new system, we programmed it for all existing floors based on the architectural plans. But if there are older levels sealed off and not on the current plans, the elevator remembers them. More like the elevator shaft still connects to them. And our new voice system, because it's so sophisticated, might be detecting those connections and trying to announce them." Dr. Chen scheduled an architectural survey. The team discovered that the hospital's basement levels had been modified extensively over the years. Basement level 3, currently used for storage, had been built over older infrastructure. Ground-penetrating radar showed large spaces below the official basement level. Sealed rooms, corridors, what looked like an entire floor of hospital space, abandoned and concrete sealed in the mid-1970s. The hospital's oldest records mentioned a crisis in 1973, a contamination incident in the research labs that occupied what was then basement level 4. The details were vague. Biological containment failure, full quarantine protocols, facility closure. 43 people had been in the basement levels when the incident occurred. All of them died. The official cause was listed as toxic exposure. The entire level had been sealed with concrete, and the hospital administrators simply removed it from the building plans. Legally, it no longer existed, but the elevator shaft still reached it. Dr. Chen ordered freight elevator C shut down pending further investigation, but the night shift staff reported that the other 3 freight elevators had started exhibiting similar anomalies. random floor announcements, instructions that weren't in the programming, and always around 2:30 to 3 a.m., the time of the 1973 incident. Then the voices changed. A nurse taking freight elevator down to basement level 1 heard the announcement. System speak in a voice that wasn't the standard female recording. It was male, distorted, panicked. Containment breach on all levels. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The elevator stopped between floors. Emergency lights kicked on. The voice continued. Oxygen systems compromised. Biological contamination detected. All personnel proceed to emergency exits. The nurse pressed the emergency call button. Security responded within 2 minutes, but when they opened the elevator doors, she was unconscious. Hypothermia, the doctors said, despite the fact that the elevator shaft was room temperature and she'd only been trapped for 90 seconds. Dr. Chen shut down all 4 freight elevators. The hospital switched to using the passenger elevators for equipment transport, despite the inconvenience. But the announcements continued. Staff reported hearing voices in the stairwells. Emergency protocols spoken by the building's PA system, even though the PA system was turned off. Instructions to report to stations that didn't exist, to follow quarantine. Procedures for an emergency that had happened 50 years ago. And every night at 2:47 a.m., the sealed freight elevators would activate on their own. No one inside. Doors opening and closing, traveling between floors. The announcement system speaking to empty cars. Basement level 4. Medical personnel report immediately. Basement level 5. Quarantine procedures in effect. Sublevel 6. Final containment zone. This is your last opportunity to evacuate. Each night the announcements went deeper. Levels that had never existed. Spaces that couldn't possibly fit within the building's physical structure. Marcus Webb returned to investigate. He rode freight elevator C down to basement level 3 at exactly 2:47 a.m. He was wearing a body camera. Dr. Chen watched from the security office. The elevator descended normally, announcing each floor. When it reached basement level 3, the doors opened. Marcus stepped out into the storage area. Rows of shelves, old equipment, decades of accumulated hospital surplus. Then the elevator doors closed behind him. The announcement system activated. Basement level 4. Doors opening. On the body camera feed, Dr. Chen watched the elevator doors open again. But the storage area was gone. Instead, Marcus was looking at a corridor. Old tile floors. Walls painted institutional green. Doors with windows showing darkened rooms. 1970s hospital architecture. Marcus turned back to the elevator. The doors were closed. He pressed the call button. Nothing. The announcement system spoke again, but this time the voice was different. Multiple voices, overlapping, all speaking in unison. Welcome to basement level 4. Please proceed to decontamination. Marcus ran for the stairs. Dr. Chen watched on the body camera as he sprinted down the corridor, past darkened rooms. Through the windows, she could see hospital beds, monitoring equipment. Some rooms had shapes in the beds, covered by white sheets. Marcus reached the stairwell door. It opened, but beyond it wasn't a stairwell. It was another corridor, identical to the first. Same green walls, same darkened rooms, same shapes in the beds. He tried another door. Same result. Every door led to another corridor. On the body camera feed, Dr. Chen heard the announcement system again. All personnel must remain in the facility until decontamination is complete. Estimated time, indefinite. Marcus's breathing was ragged. Dr. Chen, I don't know where I am. The architecture doesn't make sense. I'm in a loop. Find the elevator. Get back to the elevator. I'm trying, but every corridor looks the same. The body camera feed showed him turning a corner and stopping. At the end of the hall, standing in front of a door marked quarantine zone, was a figure in a white hazmat suit. 1970s style. Yellowed plastic. The face mask was fogged from the inside. The figure raised one hand and pointed at Marcus. The announcement system spoke. Unauthorized personnel detected. Initiating containment protocols. Every door in the corridor opened simultaneously. Figures emerged from the rooms, all wearing hazmat suits, all moving with that same slow, deliberate purpose. Marcus ran. The body camera showed a blur of green walls and fluorescent lights. He found a door marked emergency exit and pushed through it. He was in the freight elevator, alone, no figures, No corridors, just the standard elevator interior. The doors closed. The announcement system spoke normally, ground level. The elevator ascended. When the doors opened, Marcus stumbled out into the main lobby. 3:23 a.m. He'd been gone for 36 minutes. Dr. Chen met him in the lobby. Marcus was pale, shaking, hypothermic despite the temperature. His clothes smelled of disinfectant and something else, something chemical and old. What happened down there? Doctor, Chen asked. It's still happening, Marcus said. Whatever happened in 1973, down there, it never stopped. Those levels are still in quarantine, still running protocols, and the elevator. He looked back at the closed freight elevator doors. The elevator is the only way in, and the only way out. But every night at 2:47 a.m. it goes down there anyway, like it's required to, like it's checking on them. Checking on who? The people who died in the containment failure. 43 people sealed in with biological contamination. They never evacuated. They're still there, and they think they're still alive, still following emergency protocols, still waiting for someone to tell them the crisis is over. Dr. Chen had the freight elevators permanently decommissioned. All 4 cars were removed, and the shafts were sealed with concrete. The announcement systems were completely disabled, but maintenance staff still report hearing voices in the sealed elevator shafts. Announcements for floors that don't exist. Emergency protocols for a crisis that ended 50 years ago. And every night at 2:47 a.m., if you stand near the sealed elevator doors, you can hear it, the distant mechanical sound of an elevator moving between floors. Going down, always going down, reaching depths that shouldn't exist, reaching basement level 4, where 43 people are still waiting for evacuation orders that will never come. The announcement system is still speaking to them, still giving them instructions, still maintaining the illusion that someone's coming to help. Please remain calm. Decontamination procedures are in progress. Estimated completion time, calculating. Please wait. Please wait. Please wait. Forever. The Westmore building was condemned in 2018, but the demolition crew didn't arrive until 2021. Budget issues, permit delays, the usual bureaucratic tangle that leaves buildings standing long after they should have been reduced to rubble. I was part of the pre-demolition survey team. We document structural hazards before the wrecking balls arrive. Asbestos, unstable floors, anything that might complicate the demolition. It's tedious work, but it pays well, and most buildings are more sad than scary. Just empty shells where life used to happen. The Westmore building was different. 12 stories of concrete and steel, built in 1959 as a mixed-use facility. Offices on the upper floors, light manufacturing in the basement levels, freight operations throughout. It had been vacant since 2003, when the last tenant, a pharmaceutical packaging company, moved out after multiple equipment failures and what they vaguely described as operational difficulties. Our team of 4 arrived on a Monday morning. Marcus handled structural assessment, Jennifer documented hazardous materials, and Carlos managed the technical surveys. I was responsible for the vertical infrastructure, stairwells, elevator shafts, ventilation systems. The freight elevator was in the building's north corner, a massive old industrial model, the kind that could carry 8,000 pounds and looked like it could survive a nuclear blast. The car itself was gone, removed during the initial abandonment, but the shaft remained, running from the basement levels up to the 12th floor. Our first day was routine. We started at the top and worked our way down, documenting everything. The upper floors were exactly what you'd expect from an abandoned office. Building, stripped cubicles, water damage, graffiti from urban explorers, the kind of decay that's almost boring in its predictability. The problem started on the 8th floor. I was inspecting the freight elevator shaft, checking for structural damage to the concrete walls. The shaft was dark, no lighting, no maintenance for 18 years, so I was using a high-powered flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing concrete walls, steel support. Beams, the empty space where the elevator car used to travel. And something else, scratches, deep gouges in the concrete walls, running vertically down the shaft, like something with metal claws had scraped against the walls while falling. The scratches went as far as my light could reach, disappearing into the darkness below. Marcus, come look at this. Marcus examined the scratches. Cable failure, maybe? If the elevator car broke free and fell, the emergency brakes might have left marks like this. The car was removed in 2003. These look fresh. fresh, in an abandoned building. I ran my finger along one of the gouges. The concrete was rough, but the scratch itself was smooth. Recent. When was the last safety inspection on this building? 2003. Why? Because something's been in this shaft since then. We reported it to the site supervisor, who noted it in the hazard log and told us to continue the survey. Buildings do strange things when they're abandoned. Structural shifts, settling, animal intrusions. The scratches were probably nothing. But that night, reviewing the day's photographs, I noticed something else. In one photo, taken looking down the elevator shaft from the 8th floor, there was a shape, just visible at the edge of the flashlight beam, dark, geometric, like something large and rectangular suspended in the shaft. The next day, we brought rappelling equipment. Carlos and I descended into the shaft from the 8th floor, harnesses secured to structural beams. The shaft was cold, that deep, still coldness of spaces that never see sunlight. Our lights cut through the darkness in narrow cones, revealing more scratches. They covered all 4 walls now, running the entire height of the shaft. At the 6th floor level, we found the source of the geometric shape in my photograph, the elevator car. It was still there, suspended between the 5th and 6th floors, hanging motionless in the darkness. But it shouldn't have been. The removal company had documented taking the car out in 2003. I'd seen the receipts. Impossible, Carlos said. There's no way they left this. We descended closer. The car was an old model. Industrial yellow paint, faded to a sickly cream. The roof was dented, and the cables, those massive steel cables that held thousands of pounds, were frayed and twisted. Some had snapped completely. But the car wasn't falling. It was held in place by something else. Metal beams, dozens of them, driven through the elevator shaft walls and spearing through the car itself. Like the building was trying to prevent the car from falling, impaling it to hold it in place. Who installed these? I asked. Carlos examined the nearest beam. These aren't standard construction. Look at the welds, crude, uneven. Someone did this by hand, recently. Why would someone manually pin an elevator car in an abandoned shaft? Maybe to keep it from falling. But the building's been empty for 18 years. Who would even know the car was still here? We documented everything, taking hundreds of photos. The metal beams penetrated the car at multiple points, through the roof, the walls, even up through the floor. Whatever was inside would be completely inaccessible unless we cut through the beams. Our site supervisor reviewed the photos and made a call to the building's last owner. The conversation was brief. The owner insisted the elevator car had been removed in 2003. He had documentation, receipts, photographs of the removal crew hoisting the car out through a break in the 12th floor exterior wall. Then, what's in the shaft? Our supervisor asked. No answer. The owner hired a crane company to extract the car. If something was wrong, if there was a safety hazard or evidence of illegal dumping, he needed to know before demolition began. The crane arrived on Thursday. The plan was simple. Cut through the building's exterior wall at the 6th floor. Use the crane to support the elevator car, cut away the metal beams and lift the car out. I volunteered to go into the shaft to help secure the crane cables. Descending into the shaft in darkness was one thing. Descending while a crane cable the thickness of your arm was being threaded through the space was something else entirely. The shaft felt smaller, more confined, like the walls were contracting around us. Carlos and I reached the elevator car. Up close, the metal beams looked even more bizarre. They'd been driven through the walls with incredible force, and the ends that protruded into the shaft were sharp, jagged. Some had markings, scratches, dents, like someone had struck them repeatedly with tools. We secured the crane cables to the elevator car's lifting points. The car groaned, metal scraping against metal, but the cables held. The crane operator's voice crackled through our radios, tension secure. Ready to cut the beams. The cutting crew arrived, 2 workers with plasma torches, preparing to cut through the metal beams. The first beam took 20 minutes. The metal was harder than expected, some kind of reinforced steel alloy. When it finally separated, the beam crashed down the shaft, clanging off the walls before hitting bottom 6 floors below. The sound echoed for a long time. Second beam. Third. Each one fell, crashing into the darkness. The elevator car shifted slightly with each cut, held in place by the crane cables but clearly settling, finding a new center of gravity. When they cut the 8th beam, the one spearing through the elevator car's floor, something changed. The car dropped 6 inches, sudden and violent. The crane cables caught it, but the movement caused something inside the car to shift. We heard it clearly, a heavy sliding sound, like furniture being dragged across a floor, or like something that had been pinned in place suddenly being freed. Carlos looked at me. There's something inside, probably just old equipment. Counterweights or... The elevator car shook. Not from the crane, not from the cutting. It shook from inside, like something had struck the walls. The cutting crew stopped. Everyone stopped. Silence. Then another impact. Harder. The car's walls dented outward, metal buckling. "Get out of the shaft," our supervisor ordered through the radio. Everyone out. Now. Carlos and I climbed. Fast. The impacts continued below us, rhythmic, deliberate. Something inside the elevator car was trying to get out. We reached the 8th floor and pulled ourselves out of the shaft. The cutting crew was already scrambling up, tools abandoned. Behind us, the impacts grew more violent. The elevator car was swinging now, suspended by crane cables, the metal beams holding it against the shaft walls bending under the strain. One of the beams snapped. Then another. The car dropped 5 feet and caught again, suspended only by the crane cables and the 3 remaining beams. Through the opening in the shaft, we could see the car's roof. It was bulging. Something inside was pushing upward, deforming the metal. "Pull it out," our supervisor yelled to the crane. "Operator, extract it now." The crane engaged. The cables went taut, motors screaming. The remaining beams held for a moment, then began to bend. Metal shrieked against metal. The first beam tore free from the wall, concrete chunks falling into the darkness. Second beam. Third. The elevator car swung free. The crane began lifting, pulling the car up through the shaft. We watched from the 8th floor as it rose past us, that ancient industrial box, dented and deformed. Walls bulging outward like something inside was pressing against them with enormous force. The impacts had stopped. Whatever was inside had gone still. The car continued upward. 10th floor, 11th, 12th. The crane operator positioned it outside the building, suspended against the gray sky. From our position, we couldn't see inside, but we could see the crane operator's face through his cab window. He was staring at the elevator car, not moving, not reaching for the controls, just staring. "Lower it to the ground," our supervisor radioed. Nice and slow. The crane operator didn't respond. "Rodriguez, do you copy?" "Lower the car." "Nothing." Carlos grabbed binoculars and aimed them at the crane cab. After a moment, he lowered them, his face pale. "He's not moving at all, like he's frozen." Our supervisor tried the radio again. "Rodriguez, respond. What do you see?" The radio crackled. Rodriguez's voice came through, but wrong. Flat, emotionless. "The door is open." "What door?" "The elevator door. It's open. I can see inside." "What's inside?" Long silence. Then, "It's been in there since 1987. "What's been in there?" "The night crew. All 6 of them. They're still in there." Our supervisor exchanged looks with Marcus. "Rodriguez, the building's been empty since 2003. There's no night crew. They've been in the elevator since 1987. The shaft broke. The car fell. They were inside during the fall. The emergency brakes didn't engage. They fell 8 floors before the car wedged in the shaft. Before the impact killed them." "Rodriguez, lower the car. We'll investigate from the ground." They didn't know the cables were frayed. The maintenance logs were falsified. The building owner knew. He knew the cables were failing, but he didn't want to pay for replacement. So he falsified the inspection records. And on November 12, 1987, at 11:47 p.m., the cables snapped. Our supervisor was pulling up records on his tablet. There's no incident report from 1987. No accident, no casualties. The owner sealed the shaft. Rodriguez continued in that same flat tone. Welded the doors shut on every floor. Removed the elevator from the building plans. Reported the night crew as having quit. Then he installed new cables. Brought in a different elevator car and pretended nothing happened. The original car with the bodies was left in the shaft, hidden, for 34 years. I looked at Marcus. How would he know that? Marcus was reading something on his tablet, his expression darkening. Because it's true. I'm looking at the building's insurance records from 1987. There's a claim for 6 employees who terminated employment on November 12th. All on the same day. All from the night maintenance crew. The owner paid out their final paychecks and benefits without dispute. No forwarding addresses, no references. They just disappeared from record. The elevator car was still suspended against the sky, swaying gently in the wind. The crane operator's voice came through again. They're looking at me, all 6 of them. They're still in their work uniforms, still holding their tools. They've been here the whole time, waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to find them. Lower the car, Rodriguez. They want out. Then lower the car and we'll. Not out of the elevator, out of the building. They've been trapped in the shaft for 34 years. They want to leave, but they can't because they're still working, still on duty. They never clocked out, and the emergency protocols say they have to stay at their stations during a building emergency. There is no emergency. There is for them. For them, it's still November 12, 1987, at 11:47 p.m. The moment the cables snapped, that moment is still happening inside the elevator. Still falling, always falling, and they can't leave until someone tells them it's safe. Until someone says the emergency is over. Our supervisor keyed the radio. Rodriguez, I'm ordering you to lower the car. Right now. The radio went silent. Then the crane cables released. The elevator car fell. Not a controlled descent, just gravity, pure and simple. It dropped 12 stories and hit the ground with an impact that shook the entire building. The car crumpled, the ancient metal collapsing in on itself, the roof caving inward. Dust and debris erupted upward. We ran to the windows. From the 8th floor we could see the wreckage, a flattened mass of yellow metal, unrecognizable as an elevator, surrounded by scattered concrete chunks and twisted rebar. The crane operator's cab was empty. Rodriguez was gone. Emergency services arrived within minutes. Police, fire department, building inspectors. They cordoned off the site and began excavating the wreckage. What they found made the evening news. 6 bodies, mummified, dressed in maintenance uniforms from the 1980s, all positioned as if they'd been standing when the elevator hit bottom, arms raised protectively, faces locked in expressions of terror. The impact from 1987 had killed them instantly, but the way they'd fallen, wedged against each other in the confined space, had preserved their positions perfectly, like a photograph, a snapshot of the moment of death. And in the dust and debris, investigators found something else, metal beams, dozens of them. But these weren't the crude welds we documented in the shaft. These were professional installations, dated with stamps from 1987, building-grade steel with proper safety certifications. The beams that had been holding the elevator car in place, the ones we'd cut through, weren't recent additions. They were 34 years old, installed immediately after the accident to prevent the car from falling further, to contain the bodies, but we'd seen them, examined them up close. They'd look new, fresh welds, recent installation. The building owner was found in his home that evening. Heart attack, natural causes, the coroner said, but his home computer was open to a document, a maintenance log from 1987. He'd been updating it, adding entries. The final entry was dated November 12, 1987. Emergency repairs completed on freight elevator. All personnel accounted for. No casualties. System operational. Close incident report. He'd been maintaining the lie for 34 years. Updating imaginary maintenance logs. Creating false documentation. Keeping the secret alive. And somehow, the building had been keeping it too. The demolition was delayed for 6 weeks while the investigation concluded. The families of the 6 workers, or what remained of them, were notified. Funerals were held. The building owner's estate paid out wrongful death settlements. Rodriguez was never found. His truck was still in the parking lot, keys in the ignition. His apartment was undisturbed. He simply vanished the moment the elevator car hit the ground. The demolition finally began in August 2021. I wasn't part of the crew. I'd requested reassignment after the incident, but I followed the news coverage. The Westmore building came down in sections, floor by floor, over 3 weeks. When they demolished the freight elevator shaft, the crew reported unusual findings. The shaft walls were covered in scratches. We documented those. But there were also messages, words carved into the concrete. The crew photographed them. Help us. Still falling. Tell them we're here. IT never stops. The messages appeared on every floor. some carved deep into the concrete, others scratched with what looked like fingernails, all in the same handwriting, all saying the same things. The investigation concluded it was the work of urban explorers, people who'd broken into the abandoned building over the years and carved messages as a prank. But the concrete analysis showed otherwise. The scratches were made from the inside of the shaft. Some were 30 feet up from any access point, in positions impossible to reach without climbing equipment. And all of them were dated 1987. The demolition was completed in September. The site was cleared, the ground leveled. In 2022, a new office building began construction on the location. 8 stories, modern design, state-of-the-art everything, including 3 passenger elevators and 1 freight elevator. The construction crew reported problems during the elevator installation. The shaft for the freight elevator kept showing structural issues. Cracks in the concrete, settling, weight stress that shouldn't exist in a new building. One worker swore he heard voices in the shaft, echoes of people talking, the sound of tools, footsteps on metal platforms. When he climbed down to investigate, he found scratches on the walls. Fresh scratches. 4 words carved into the new concrete. "We're still here." The building was completed in early 2023. The freight elevator passed all inspections. It functions perfectly, takes loads between floors exactly as designed. But the maintenance staff report that sometimes, late at night, the freight elevator activates on its own. No call button pressed, no one inside. It simply starts moving, down to the basement, then up to the 8th floor, then down again. Down and up, down and up. The same path, the same floors. The same path the elevator would have taken on November 12, 1987, before the cable snapped. And if you're in the building late at night, after midnight, when the offices are empty, you can hear it. The distant mechanical hum of the freight elevator moving between floors, sometimes with the sound of voices. 6 people talking quietly in the dark, their conversation too faint to make out words. Still working, still on duty, still waiting for someone to tell them the emergency is over, that they can clock out and go home. Still falling through a moment that never ends. The building management doesn't talk about it. The maintenance logs show normal operations. Everything is fine. But 3 maintenance workers have quit in the past year. All of them worked the night shift. All of them refused to use the freight elevator. And all of them reported the same thing. Scratches appearing on the shaft walls. Messages carved into the concrete. Always the same words. Still falling. Help us. IT never stops. In November 2024, exactly 37 years after the original accident, the freight elevator stopped between floors. Trapped for 6 hours with a full load of office supplies. No mechanical failure. No explanation. When they finally got it moving again, investigators found something strange. The walls inside the elevator car were covered in scratches. Deep gouges in the metal, like someone had been clawing at them from the inside. Desperate, terrified, trying to escape something that never stops falling.